It started as a habit, not a plan. The small coffee shop sat on the corner between work and home, the kind of place people passed every day without noticing. One morning, running late and tired of chain cafes, they walked in together without thinking much about it. The space was narrow, warm, filled with the smell of fresh coffee and baked pastries. Music played quietly in the background, not loud enough to interrupt thoughts. They ordered quickly, stood close because there wasn't much room, and left without talking about it. It was just coffee. But the next day, they came back. And the day after that. Slowly, the place became part of their routine. Morning coffee before work, sometimes silent, sometimes full of sleepy jokes. The barista started recognizing them, remembering their orders, smiling when they walked in. That small familiarity mattered more than they expected. It felt grounding. Like the day hadn't really started until they stood there with warm cups in their hands. Over time, the coffee shop became more than a stop. It became a pause. Some mornings they sat at the small table by the window, watching the city wake up. Other days they stood at the counter, leaning slightly into each other, sharing a pastry without discussing it. They talked about work frustrations, plans they were unsure about, dreams that felt too big to say out loud anywhere else. The space felt safe, neutral, untouched by expectations. No one demanded anything from them there. There were days when tension followed them in. Arguments left unfinished, moods heavy. On those mornings, conversation was minimal. But even then, the routine held. Coffee ordered. Cups placed on the counter. A quiet look exchanged. Sometimes that was enough to soften things. Not to fix them, but to remind them that connection didn't disappear just because words failed. Seasons changed outside the window. Summer light turned harsh, then softened. Rain streaked down the glass. Scarves replaced short sleeves. The coffee shop stayed the same. Same music. Same smells. Same table. They noticed how much they had changed inside that consistency. How they listened better now. How silence felt less uncomfortable. How being together didn't always need explanation or effort. One morning, as they stood waiting for their drinks, the barista called out their names without asking. It caught them off guard. They looked at each other and smiled. It was such a small thing, but it landed deeply. Being known without having to perform. Being recognized simply for showing up, again and again. They carried their coffee outside that day, walking slowly instead of rushing. One of them said quietly that this place felt like part of their relationship now. The other nodded, understanding that not all important moments are dramatic or planned. Some grow slowly, through repetition, through presence, through choosing the same small thing together every day. The coffee shop never knew how much it mattered. To everyone else, it was just a place to get caffeine. To them, it was where mornings became calmer, conversations became softer, and love learned how to exist in ordinary moments. And that, they realized, was sometimes the most lasting kind. As time went on, they stopped noticing how often they were there, the way you stop noticing a clock that's always been on the wall. The coffee shop folded itself into their life quietly. It was where good news was shared first, whispered over the rim of a cup before it reached anyone else. It was where disappointments landed softly, cushioned by warm mugs and the familiar hum of the espresso machine. Some mornings they barely spoke at all, yet still left feeling understood, as if the space itself carried what they didn't say. There was a winter morning when snow fell heavier than expected, turning the city slow and uncertain. Trains were late, sidewalks slick, schedules ruined. They almost didn't go in, thinking the place might be closed. But the lights were on, glowing warmly through the fogged-up windows. Inside, only a few people sat scattered, coats still on. The barista greeted them like nothing unusual was happening. That normality felt comforting. They sat by the window, watching snow pile up, realizing how rare it was to have a place that didn't demand urgency when the world outside did. They began to understand each other better in those moments. How one of them needed routine to feel safe, while the other needed small changes to feel alive. The coffee shop became the balance point between those needs. Same place, same smell, but every day slightly different depending on mood, weather, or the way they chose to show up. Sometimes they stayed longer than planned, letting time stretch. Other times they rushed out, hands brushing briefly, promising to talk later. Both felt okay. One afternoon, after a long silence between them that had lasted days, they met there again without discussing it. They sat down, ordered as usual, and waited. When the cups arrived, one of them finally spoke, admitting fear instead of frustration. The other listened without interrupting, without defending. That conversation didn't solve everything, but it shifted something important. It reminded them that connection didn't require perfect timing or perfect words. It required showing up in the same place, willing to be honest. Years later, they would move away from that neighborhood. New routines would form. New cafes would appear. But that small corner shop would stay with them in memory, not as a location, but as a feeling. A reminder that love doesn't always grow through big gestures or dramatic moments. Sometimes it grows in line at the counter, in shared silence, in names remembered, and in mornings that begin not with certainty, but with warmth. And long after the coffee shop stopped knowing their names, they carried forward what it taught them, that choosing each other daily, in quiet, ordinary ways, could be enough to build something steady, patient, and real.